to be amended, and do certain fresh insertions and amendments need to be made for the path ahead to be charted in the right direction. Now in 2015, on the occasion of the 125th birth anniversary year of Baba Saheb Bhimrao Ramji Ambedkar, the government declared November 26 as the Samvidhaan Divas to celebrate the principles of governance our Samvidhaan stands for. For the next 40 minutes, like I said, we will discuss how the Samvidhaan can be our ideal guide on the Viksit Bharat journey. Now, from granting universal adult franchise in the 1950s to providing for progressive judicial interpretation of rights, the Samvidhaan has been instrumental in fostering inclusivity, empowering marginalized communities, and promoting gender equality. The Samvidhaan is a sacred document that can't be measured through the prism of politics. It belongs to every citizen, to every Bharatiya, irrespective of caste, class, community, religion, region, gender or language.
हमारा संविधान हमारी राष्ट्रीय अस्मिता का ग्रंथ है। ये हमारी राष्ट्रीय पहचान का ग्रंथ है।
The soul of our constitution has proved that Bharat is one and it will be one forever.
Let's try and understand. The original preamble on the 26th of November 1949 stated, "We, the people of Bharat or people of India, having solemnly resolved to constitute India into a sovereign, democratic republic and to secure to all its citizens justice, social, economic and political, liberty of thought, expression, belief, faith and worship, equality of status and of opportunity, to promote among them all fraternity." This is the original preamble of Bharatiya Samvidhaan adopted on the 26th of November 1949. And viewers, time and again here on the Right Stand, we have said that the original preamble did not have the words secular and socialist. These were forcefully inserted into the constitution, as many would maintain, when the nation was in emergency, when democracy was in jail and fundamental rights had been totally compromised. Should the evolution of the constitution work towards erasing those that doctrinally limit Bharat's economic policy? Because dharmascha moolam artha, that means the way our economic policies are will directly depend and directly influence whether or not we are able to do right by society, follow the dharma of a nation and its governors to try and perform for the people. And that's the reason why this question comes out. Now, the other thing, 42nd Amendment Act 1976, during emergency period 1975 to 77, the preamble was changed, words socialist and secular were added, sovereign democratic republic was changed to sovereign socialist secular democratic republic. Words socialist and secular which were argued to be not relevant to the doctrinal entity defining Bharat, because it was inherently Bharat was secular, inherently the word republic itself meant that there was a certain level of democratic following and that it was secular in nature. And Pandit Nehru himself, as chronicled in this book 1947 to 57, India, the Birth of a Republic by Chandrachud Ghosh, very clearly said that although his intent was socialist, he didn't want it inserted because he didn't want to impose any economic thought vision on Bharat. Unity of the nation was changed to unity and integrity of the nation. Well, there were a few amendments that happened thereafter in the 43rd and 44th Amendment, but the fact that the preamble was altered, that was never touched or changed again. Now, does that restrict our evolution, or has Bharat moved beyond that? or have these words so far been debased to that extent that they no longer hold the relevance with which they were actually inserted during the time of emergency? Now, does the Samvidhaan need an evolution for a Viksit Bharat? Let's try and understand this also, and then we'll go open it up to our guests. These are a few points to ponder, viewers, few points to ponder, and whether or not these should be taken up for an active discussion. Should the terms socialist and secular that were inserted during the emergency in 1976 continue? Or do we need a rethink and a relook towards our preamble so that it does not doctrinally restrict the nation's policy because there are certain characteristics which are already inherent? Should the nation not have the flexibility to pursue a certain level of socio-capitalism, certain level of welfareism, or economic policies as relevant to the time and the growth curve of the nation? Socialist sits literally uneasily with a modern competitive economy, replacing it with concepts like economic freedom, liberal economic system, and open market principles could better reflect Bharat's current economic direction. Or should there be a word which says that we follow artha or economic policy that will sustain the nation at that relevant point in time and leave it open in terms of a liberal economic policy, balancing minority rights with local realities? Bharat cannot and should not remove minority rights, but it can refine how minorities are identified. Should minorities be defined at a district level or a local level, regional level definition, not just based on religion or panth, but also based on language and what happens to the linguistic minorities? Now, Hindus, for example, today are minorities in many districts across Bharat and in in many states, including certain states of Northeast and also the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir. So, if there are minorities there, should they not have minority rights? So, that's another question. The other part, uniform gender rights beyond personal laws. Women's rights should not vary based on personal law. When it comes to gender justice, then there has to be an equanimous platform, and that should be enshrined in our constitution, many would argue. We'll open that up for discussion. Practices such as child marriage permitted under interpretation of Islamic law, or as certain people are saying, reduce the age of marriage to 14 or 16. Should all of this not be very clearly defined that no, as per science and as what is healthy for both gender, the age should be the same. The age you can drive, the age you can get married should be the same for both gender, and it should not be swayed by individual personal laws of various faiths. Introducing decolonization in the preamble or other words that do away with the colonial mindset completely is another suggestion that is thrown up. To try and really remove colonial era residue in terms of laws, administrative practices, in the lexicon, in mindset, and overall doing a complete reset that Bharat will stick to what is Bharatiya and not what is a foreign imposition. Strengthening the uniform civil code instead of complete sudden UCC, a phased approach could be constitutionally mandated, starting perhaps with gender, then inheritance, then guardianship reforms, before moving to the other two, to ensure social harmony and also equality before law. Judicial reforms, perhaps more important than ever before, to stop judicial corruption, to ensure judicial probity and to ensure judicial accountability. 4.8 crore plus pendencies. All this, should this now be explicitly said that the judiciary, one of the pillars of democracy, cannot be above scrutiny, external scrutiny or independent scrutiny. It cannot self-audit itself. It has to open itself to scrutiny. Reforming governors' powers. The discretionary powers of governors often sources of center-state tension. Should that have clearer constitutional boundaries? This would prevent misuse during government formation and dismissal. Simultaneous elections or the push for one nation, one election. The constitution can be amended to synchronize Lok Sabha State Assembly elections, or as has been recommended by the Justice COVID Committee, and follow that in the true spirit, so that this entire cycle of never-ending cycle of election and policy making only influenced by election, doles being given only for election, all of this stops. Decriminalization of politics. Can this be comprehensive that anybody and everybody who have cases, unless they are either acquitted or cleared of those charges, cannot campaign? Campaigning of elections also Should there be a certain level of transparency that anybody and everybody can contribute? Let those documents be public. Nobody will judge them based on the contributions, but the limits and how much is being spent should be absolutely transparent, and that capping should not be removed. Electoral bonds, etc. These are aspects. Should there be a constitutional debate, and should that be enshrined in our constitution? These policies of how people will be represented and what will be the rules that will govern the representatives of people. Revisiting the 10th schedule, the anti-defection law is another suggestion. Can this be possible through a healthy parliamentary debate? So these are laws within the constitution, fundamental principles that could come into effect. There are other aspects too, which we will come to in a bit, but largely these are going beyond the obvious. That's the attempt. Let's go across to our guests and then open it up and get their thoughts in. Shazia Almi, National Spokesperson of the BJP, Aman Sinha, Senior Advocate, Supreme Court, Deshratan Nigam, Lawyer in the Supreme Court, Kapil Madan, Lawyer in the Supreme Court, Karuna Nandi, Senior Advocate, Supreme Court. My namaste and Jai Hind to everybody. Thank you for your time. I have done my talking for this session. I have laid out the fundamentals, the thought processes, the suggestions that have come across. Now I open it up to our panelists to discuss, and let's have a healthy conversation, please, and allow each other the time to perhaps exchange of views. So let's have samvad and not vivad. That's my humble request. Shazia Almi, please open up.
Yes. So, why did the framers of the Indian Constitution, including B.R. Ambedkar, who was a chairman of the drafting committee, not include the word secular in the Indian Constitution? Now, because secularism was seen as a term as ambiguous, and people felt at that point of time that it carried connotations drawn from European history, especially the separation of church and state. And they actually felt, and is there, if you read the debates of Constituent Assembly, you realize that they actually thought that imposing such a concept might not fit India's socio-cultural context. So, and Ambedkar has argued in great detail that Constitution should provide the structural framework for governing organs and fundamental rights. It should not be a fixed philosophy, because it should be decided by the people and the elected representatives. So, you wonder why this was done, and also the time and the circumstances in which it was included, both secular and socialist. Now, definitely, we all know that there was no need whatsoever, and that there were so many other clauses ensuring that whether it's freedom of practice or religion was already given in the Constitution. So the very fact that it was done during emergency, 42nd Amendment, as you mentioned, shows that it was forced and it was not needed. So, and it was also very politically controversial. So yes, we should revisit it. I think Nehru missed the big chance, Jawaharlal Nehru, when it came to Hindu Code Bill. He had a very different standard when it came to UCC. And there's an interview in which Nehru has said, it's a BBC interview, and when he was asked the question that why is UCC only part of directive principles, and he said, oh, I can't do that because, the Pakistan will go tom-tomming the fact, and we can't alienate the Muslims in this time. So I think UCC should have been done a long time back, and yes, we've been floundering on these things. So these are 2-3 things that I feel very strongly about. Also the word socialist. Now, why would we have that? It is according to times and need. We might not need socialism. We need to go with the tide of the day. So why should it be a fixed philosophy, an ideological philosophy imposed on us through an amendment, especially during controversial times and emergency?
Right. Now, as I open this up and bring in Karuna Nandi, just reading a passage from this book, 1947 to 1957, India, The Birth of a Republic, authored by Chandrachud Ghosh, and he's done a lot of research and he's quoted, and I'm reading from page 52. In an earlier debate on the 15th of November 1948, K.T. Shah had moved that the words secular, federal and socialist be inserted so that the clause read, India shall be a secular, federal, socialist union of states. Now, as far as the word secular was concerned, Shah argued, we have been told time and again from every platform that ours is a secular state. If that is true and if that holds good, I do not see why the term should not be added or inserted in the constitution itself, once again, to guard against any possibility of misunderstanding or misapprehension. Calling the amendment purely superfluous, Dr. Ambedkar protested and he said, why what should be the policy of the state, how the society should be organized in its social and economic sides are matters which must be decided by the people themselves according to time and circumstances. It cannot be laid down in the constitution itself because that is destroying democracy altogether. This is what Dr. Baba Saheb Ambedkar said. So all those who are holding the Samvidhaan today and saying Samvidhaan ko bachayenge, they are actually doing Baba Saheb Ambedkar a disservice. The other part, I'm just quickly reading this, Karuna ji. K.T. Shah then argued in favor of inserting the word socialist. Page 53. I am fully aware that it would not be quite a correct description of the state today in India to call it a socialist union. I am afraid it is anything but socialist so far. It's on those times. So this is in that time in 1948 only. But I do not see a reason why we should not insert here an aspiration, which I trust many in this house share with me, that if not today, soon hereafter, the character and composition of the state will change so radically, so satisfactorily and effectively that countries will now be called Socialist Union of States. So these were socialists, and Nehruji also had this thought process, and that's mentioned in page 42. But the proposal found support but was opposed by Ambedkar, and I'm reading this part.
Yes.
If you, and I'm quoting Dr. Ambedkar as in the passage from the Constituent Assembly debates, that's what's being quoted here. If you state in the Constitution that the social organization of the state shall take a particular form, you are, in my judgment, taking away the liberty of the people to decide what should be the social organization which they wish to live. It is perfectly possible for today for the majority people to hold that the socialist organization of society is better than the capitalist organization of society. But it would be perfectly possible for thinking people to devise some other form of social organization which might be better than the socialist organization of today or of tomorrow. I do not see, therefore, why the constitution should tie down the people to live in a particular form and not leave it to the people themselves to decide for themselves. So that means adapt to the changing times. Karuna ji.
Anandji, this is a debate that has been framed in terms of what the government of the day wants and its agenda for constitutional change. Today it is Constitution Day. So let us take a second to celebrate the fact that the founding principles of this country have resulted in a sustained democracy, have resulted in the separation of powers, have resulted in a Supreme Court that still exists and flourishes today, a parliament and an executive. Now, with regard to secularism, there is a lot that is said, and quite frequently by this government in particular, about the word secularism in the preamble and the fact that it was inserted by Indira Gandhi during the emergency. It's a pointer, though, to what the Constitution actually speaks of. S.R. Bommai, the Supreme Court held, and Keshav Nanda Bharti, 13 judges, that it is part of the basic structure of the Constitution.
Yeah.
It's not just enshrined in Articles 25, 26, etc., and in the preamble. It is also very much a part of, for example, Article 14, Article 19, the right to life, the right to life and liberty, the right to freedom of thought and expression, the right to assembly, the right to equality and the rule of law. So what Dr. Ambedkar also said in the Constituent Assembly on the 2nd of December 1948 is that the state has no religion. He said it is not the duty of the state to promote any particular religion. He insisted that India should be a religiously neutral state. That freedom of religion is absolute as long as it does not undermine equality, and that the liberty of conscience must exist with social reform. That the religious conceptions of Hindus are so vast that they cover every aspect of life. It is necessary that the religious law be divorced from the social law. So you were also saying, for instance, that in other religions, it is possible to marry people, marry minors, or, This is against the law. You can't marry a minor in India.
Correct.
It's illegal. You can't. It's not, it's not part of, I think you were probably pointing to Sharia law. It's not part of Muslim personal law in India to be able to marry a minor. It's not permissible. It's illegal, right? So those things are bogies, and let's place them aside. Look, in terms of there are many ways in which I think today we must recommit ourselves to the values that we all share under the Constitution. You know, we all share a value of equality. We all share a value that our country must flourish, and the citizens of our country must flourish. Everyone who is in our country must flourish. And in that regard, I think that there is a lot of work to be done. For example, making sure that the justice system is faster.
Yeah.
So in that regard, we need to just have more judges, have more a better infrastructure, and in that the executive and the courts are working together. But I think we need to see a lot more of that. Where I think there needs to be a lot more respect for boundaries is in the current system. We have the collegium system. It is not. In the last few years, it has become more imperfect. And why do I say that? For two reasons. Number one, the fact that in Justice Chandrachud's time, there was some transparency that was brought in. When there were deliberations of the collegium, what used to happen was that a note was put out, placed as much as was thought possible at the time. It was imperfect, but it was a step in the right direction. Recently, we had a situation where a judge was appointed ahead of many women judges and male judges to the Supreme Court. Justice Nagaratna had entered a dissent, and that dissent was not even made public. It was on, and it was not even made public, so we don't know why he was not. An official dissent was entered.
Correct.
You know. And the second thing I think is that the government is keeping pocket vetoes. So a number of names are offered for judgeship, and they will approve the ones that they like and just sit on the ones that they don't like. So, for example, we have Saurabh Kirpal, who is a senior advocate and is openly gay, and was argued alongside me for the queer marriage case. And year after year, he was willing to take the pay cut, dedicate himself to the country, and he had accepted the honor of being appointed a High Court judge. And today still, that has not happened. And so I think that these are two things that we need to reform. But
Right.
I also,
Right.
you also
will have
feel
to yield because there are others. So I'll give you another 30 seconds to make your point, and then, yeah.
Thank you. I also feel we need to come together to dedicate ourselves to the values that we all share. There are many different kinds of people in this country.
Right.
There are many different genders, many different religions, many different castes. But we all understand that we're all, for example, dying of air pollution today, right? We all understand that there is a great deal of desperate poverty in this country. We all understand that we want our children to have better lives. So I think we need to all dedicate ourselves together to those values and focus less on what divides us.
Yeah, it's about what unites us. So the fact is that if minority is not defined properly, so if Hindus are minority or Sikhs are minority in a particular region, and if there are linguistic minorities, are their rights not trampled upon? You read the passage from the Constitution which very clearly says no minority anywhere should be dealt unjustly with. And we are at fault. We are at fault in many areas across our country where the religious and the linguistic minorities have been compromised, and especially when they are Hindu. And that's very evident in the Northeast. It's very evident in Jammu and Kashmir. It's evident everywhere. Where are the rights for such people? So even in the education system. Yes.
I will take only 20 seconds and I will allow everyone else to. I will just yield after that.
Ji.
So while I agree with Ms. Karuna Nandi on Saurabh Kirpal, who definitely hasn't got his due, and I don't think it really matters what his sexual orientation is. I think it's really unfair. I would disagree entirely on the issue of the Sharia law it being legalistic, because there is actually the Supreme Court had actually dismissed a plea by the National Commission for Protection of Child Rights, which challenged a Punjab and Haryana High Court ruling, which held that a 16-year-old girl could be a Muslim girl, could be married to could get married, because that is permissible under Muslim personal law, but is not allowed by the Indian state. So there is definitely, it is not legal it is legal in Sharia. I mean, whether the word legal can be used for Sharia at all, but the fact of the matter is that there is a contradiction when it comes to personal law and the Constitution.
There are more than 15 villages in Kerala today, and it is documented that shun the courts and they are run by Sharia and Sharia courts. How is that constitutional? And who's taking, where is the umbrage being taken to that? So, defining minorities, is it important that it should be based on region and linguistic minorities should be also taken? I'm just opening up the debate now. Karunaji, please, I have to go to the other three people who have not spoken at all. Yeah.
Fact. It's the Prohibition of Child Marriage Act 2006, which sets the minimum legal age of marriage in India at 18 years for women, 21 years for men. So let's just put that other idea aside.
No, no, it's not about aside. The courts are not putting them aside, and it's rampant in public, in life. Yeah. So that's because the separation, ma'am, the separation in letter and spirit has not happened. The separation of social laws and social practices from your religious ones, that's not happened, and that's the reason why the UCC has become such a huge debate point. Why was it such a debate point? Why was instant teen talaq? Why did it have to be criminalized, and why was it such a big thing if it was not being practiced and it was anyway is illegal? So I'm just saying the codification of civil contracts has not happened as was envisaged, saying over a period of time under the directive principles it has been mandated in the constitution, but it's not happened. Definition of minorities has been used. The word minority has been used in place of Muslims, but minorities are minorities in particular region. It's not been defined carefully. Now, why is it that there are so many Vaishno Devi institution? More than most of the students who have got under the quota systems are non-Hindu. But will the same thing happen in a non-Hindu institution? Will it happen in a Christian missionary or in a Muslim school? It will not. So then there is no parity. Where nobody is arguing that the constitution should discriminate against minorities or those who are less in number. But that doesn't mean that you discriminate against those who are more in number and fault them for being more in number. So constitution has to restore parity. Right now, right to equality is not being served. Right to justice is not being served, and right to life is also not being served in an equal and impartial way. Aman Sinha ji, what would you want to weigh in on? Many facets,
evening,
starting from the preamble downwards. Yes, please.
Anand, first of all, let me say that my heartiest greetings to all fellow Indians, including all fellow panelists, on the 76th Samvidhaan Divas. The Constitution of India, in fact, even today, is the world's longest written charter, which seamlessly integrates universal principles with native Indian wisdom. And I believe, Anand, this is a day to honor and celebrate our Constitution's profound legacy and the fact that this document, which was adopted in 1949 from the ashes of partition, its essence still endures. Enduring democracy, secularism, federalism, fostering unity in diversity. Now, Anand, you have very aptly set out a very comprehensive agenda for legal, judicial, constitutional reforms. I believe, discussing that itself will take a 3-day conclave. But I can say today, Anand, that the way the Constitution has played out and unraveled today, this is the document which has elevated India to a global stature by elevating poverty of more than 25 crore citizens, orchestrating about 17 flawless elections with nearly 100 crore voters, which is unheard of, and enshrining equity, affirmative action, whether on women's empowerment issue or on reservation of SC, ST, etc. So therefore, our Constitution has withstood the test of time. It has strengthened our democracy. It has strengthened the fundamental principles, the basic features of the Constitution, and therefore, I believe that this Constitution, our Constitution of India, is a robust, formidable document, is a robust, formidable charter, which has helped not only in ensuring justice and equality to people, but is also progressive and in tune with the new mindsets of decolonizing mindsets and nationalistic progress and aspirations for the third largest economy. Now, if you have any queries on specific issues, I can respond to it, Anand.
Yeah, the simple, straightforward is the immediate discussions that need to be taken up. When the preamble, which is the doctrine, when that itself restricts Bharat's evolution, should that not evolve? Should that not be changed? Because the founding fathers or the founding members of the Constituent Assembly irrespective of their own personal political ideologies, wanted the nation to decide based on the period of time. Now, if Pandit Nehru, despite being a socialist, said that I would not want to thrust this ideology into the preamble, if that's been done, should there not be a conversation there? Should the definition of minority not be very clearly clarified, and should it not be based on region so that nobody is denied justice? Also, 4.8 crore pendencies, judicial reforms and accountability. One of the pillars believes that it cannot be accountable to the other three, or it cannot be held to account. And look at the level of corruption. Look at the level of probity. Crores are assigned on the budget for building more courts. Where are the courts? Where are the judges? In fact, if you look at the criminal angle, we don't even have a national prosecutor's body. There is no method for appointing
Anand,
prosecutors.
yes.
How and the burden of proof in every criminal case lies on prosecution. So I'm just saying there's so much to be done, but what would you want to immediately touch upon?
Yes. So, if I may respond to it one by one, Anand, it's a very fair, legitimate question that you raise with respect to incorporation of words secular and socialist, which never existed in the preamble. They were subsequently added by 42nd Amendment, and these are the only two words which have been actually added to the original preamble. Now, therefore, it is very natural to have a conversation and discussion on this. However, Supreme Court in large number of matters has also held that to be a part of the basic structure and something integral to our constitution. More recently, I believe that a statement was also made in Parliament that as of now there is no proposal for changing it. So, but there can be a conversation. There is no difficulty with it, and one can very clearly see why people want to discuss this, because this was not something which was originally there in the preamble. Now, as far as your question with respect to pendency, legal reforms, judicial pendency, etc. is concerned, this has been in works. The judiciary and the government, I am sure, both are seized of the issue. Large number of reforms have been ushered in, but still there is scope for improvement, and large number of reforms still are required to be brought in. As far as judicial appointments and the paucity of judges, so to speak, is concerned, certainly there has to be a expeditious process. However, as you have seen that NJAC, which was enacted unanimously by Parliament and all the state legislatures, in fact, it was a legislation which did not find even a single objection or a dissenting vote all through the country. Still, it was, set aside by the Supreme Court. So, therefore, there are, large number of such issues which are required to be dealt with, with a deep insight and in a very systematic manner. As far as your issue with criminal laws is concerned, you would recall that the criminal laws, when they were initially proposed, it was by Lord Macaulay some 175 years back.
Yeah.
And the same, archaic colonial structure continued till the time that the present government, couple of years back, completely amended those three criminal laws and made Bharatiya Nyaya Sahita, Bharatiya Nagrik Suraksha Sahita and Sakshya Adhiniyam. And there is also a provision for delinking the prosecution and investigation in that very same three sets of criminal legislation. That apart, Anand, large number of reforms, large number of new legislations have been ushered in this government. And, this is a government during whose aegis maximum number of irrelevant, archaic, outdated laws running into more than 1,200 have been repealed, which will provide for ease of justice to the citizens.
Right. Kemal Pasha took less than 24 hours to become Kemal Ataturk, and to ensure that all Arab references, language, etc. would be changed in Turkey. Now, this government has taken 3 elections, 12 years, to get to a point where it would openly say we need to decolonize. And Desharatan Nigamji, that means Article 1, which says India, that is Bharat, would first have to say this is Bharat. Because where is the decolonization going to happen till the time the decolonization actually is shown with intent? then this will become Republic of Bharat. To use the word, one word in Hindi and one word in English is the biggest division. To say India in English and Bharat in Hindi is the biggest division that we are showing in our country.
Well, Anand, in fact, if you look at the Constituent Assembly debates, things were very ferocious out there, although it is presented that everything went ordinarily in the normal circumstances. However, ferocious debates took place, and there was a criticism that Indian Constitution has British imprint all over it in it rather than Indian tradition and culture. Except a few paintings and drawings by Nandlal Bose's team. The rest of them had the complete foreign imprint, and people say udhar ka liya hua constitution. So what we need today is to be seen is whether India was a socialist country in 1947. No. Whether it was a socialist country in 1950s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, even till today, was never a socialist country, which means one of the basic feature is collective ownership of the means of production, which was never there. Even at the time of independence, we had private entrepreneurship, industries and businesses, which continues till this date. And the startup ecosystem that you have is certainly not socialist. It allows individuals to, excel, to unleash their potential. Whereas the socialist system requires everything under the control of all economic activity by one particular government, whether it is state level or not. So certainly this has never been a socialist country. Yes, welfare state one can understand because large number of poor people were there at the time of independence, and a huge amount of work has also been done out there. And therefore, it was never a socialist country. It is just a mere, ornamentation in the preamble. Secondly, being secular, there is no separation of religion and state in India so far as minorities are concerned. Then in one sense, why should the temple be under the controls of the government through endowment acts in various states, whereas the masjid or other places are not under the control? Is this a separation of religion or what you call church and the state? No, certainly not. And how are the schools run by Hindus where they teach their own religion do not get the government grants where the others get it? Is this a separation? So what I see is secularism, what is written in the constitution is merely a sham. It is not in the true spirit and letter. It is tilted towards minorities, and whereas the constitution itself, we all say that constitution is supreme, certainly yes, but the very same constitution makes people of this country supreme, we the people of India. So the will of the people has to be respected. Is it respected? The governance through majority, it is never respected. The fact remains that the system which is there, where the culture of India, the history that was taught to us was not based on the real facts and evidences. What we have actually seen, the RTIs filed with the NCRT, huge number of RTIs clearly said that they do not have the evidences of the chapters that they are teaching. So the very fact that India being the mother of democracy, with Vaishali being republic and the Chola Empire being republic, that has to be there. The self-confidence, the decolonization, the mindset that has to be there. The construction of Ram Mandir is one such a step towards decolonization. And the Dhwaj that has been, hoisted today with the tree that is there, which is our ancient tree which is there. So all this is decolonization. Yes, we have to move in the right direction. A lot of work has been done. Enough has to be done also. To say that India is a secular country, no, it is not. The burden of secularism is being carried only by Hindus in this country. The rest are not secular. What we have seen, you can find, you can count all those people in your hands who from the other sides are actually secular. But most of them, what we see on the road, what we see every time, the Waqf Act or the People's Places of Worship Act, or, for example, the communal bill which the Congress tried to bring, where Hindus were made responsible for the riots and the violence. This does not speak of secularism, certainly not. And things need to change, Anand.
Well, things do need to change. You are entitled to your view. I would not want to broad brush the entire segment of non-Hindus as those who don't adhere to this concept of parity or equal and separating. See, Bharat was never keeping the church separate from the state. Bharat was never a Protestant nation. This was a Catholic Protestant fight, and this term secular is alien to Bharat. Bharat had a position where dharma means justice for all and appeasement for none. That was the concept. This word secular is alien, does not work here, because we had a Pandit for a Prime Minister and a Maulana for an Education Minister in the first cabinet itself. So, keeping religion separate from state does not work. That was not how it was. So that word has been debased, sir. So let's try and do away with this word and understand the spirit with which Bharat actually worked. And that was a concept principle from Ram Rajya, where the law is equal for everyone. Everyone is equal before the law. Kapil Madan, thank you for your patience. Yes, please. Your argument. You're on mute, Kapil. Sorry.
So, Anand, I would just begin by saying I believe, the Constituent Assembly and, Dr. Ambedkar at that point in time underestimated how low our, politics can go. And perhaps that was one of the reasons why the word secular and socialist was not expressly mentioned. But if you look at the document as a whole, it gives you a fair amount of an idea and comprehension that they actually meant that, our nation that we would be building will be a secular nation, will be a socialist nation for the people of this country. And let me give you a very clear example, why I say so. If you look at our articles from, 25 to 28, it gives you freedom of practicing your religion, freedom of conscience, freedom of your faith. And if you look at the, other fundamental rights that our constitution envisage, more specifically Article 14, which guarantees equality before the law. And what essentially, this 42nd Amendment has done, it has sort of, put an extra lock on the door. The door, the inside room already, have relevant provisions which can safely conclude that, these ideas are imbibed in the Constitution, but they have expressly mentioned only in the 40.
Then why did this 42nd Amendment come into play when there was no parliamentary debate and when the nation was in emergency? When democracy and freedom itself, fundamental rights itself were compromised.
So Anand, it's not the first time. So for, as you very
and
well
why was it that there was a 43rd and a 44th Amendment, Kapil Madan? And what the Constitution of today is passed beyond after the 44th Amendment.
Anand, I believe you never interrupted I'm speaking in the last, and perhaps allow me to complete, and I will answer all your queries and all your questions that you may have. Now, also, if you look at the constitutional debates, it rules out the idea that the state will identify with any particular religion. The fact that you have not, included or, identified our, the nation that was in comprehension at that point in time, how we will govern ourselves, they have categorically ruled out any idea of identifying with any particular religion. Now, I was a little surprised when I was when I was listening to my good friend, Mr. Other panelists who just spoke before me. Mr. Nigam. So, Mr. Nigam, I think he is a little mistaken. He basically confused himself with two ideas. What he was trying to do is, he was trying to say, look, Prime Minister have gone to Ram Mandir and, he's done, etc., etc. And that's the idea of, how our nation, would be doing. And he was trying to portray that, this is, what the Constitution meant, not, you were doing anything for the minor moratories, etc. I think he was gravely mistaken at that point in time, because being a Prime Minister, it is your individual faith that allows you to go and practice your faith. That's also imbibed in the Constitution. The fact that the Prime Minister does not go to other religion, that's his individual personal choice. That's not the state imposes on him that you will go to a particular place or you will not go to a particular place. So I think he is, terribly, mistaken when he has mixed these.
I need to comment.
He's mixed these two ideas. So again, let me give you another perspective to look at it. So Mr. Sharda says, and one of the panelists, I believe, Shazia also mentioned that, there could be an issue that why would you have a, word called socialist? I mean, the people could choose something else, or people, would not want to.
It's not just Shazia who said it. Dr. Ambedkar also said the same thing. Jawaharlal Nehru also said the same thing.
But I think my simple
point is you quoted the Constituent Assembly debates. My point is, sir, I have quoted Dr. Ambedkar, and you are willing to uphold amendments when these amendments were made against the very principles on which Dr. Ambedkar envisaged the Constitution, and the Constituent Assembly, despite being differing in their ideologies, argued on the Assembly in a democratic manner. You are justifying the 42nd Amendment when the country was under emergency and there was no parliamentary debate. 55 MPs were in jail, and then this was forced upon Bharat, and that you don't believe is the biggest black. See, when you start basing your argument based on the fact that the nation was in democracy was in jail, and nation was in emergency, and the 42nd Amendment is valid, then your argument itself is specious, Kapil Madan. That's where I'm coming from. We will take this forward. I have to pause this because we're joined by Mr. Mahesh Jethmalani. He is with us at this point. My first question, Mahesh Jethmalani ji, thank you very, very much for your time. I want to understand. Let's get into this whole argument around Samvidhaan Divas. Minorities. Who are the minorities? And you know that they should be defined, or should they not be defined clearly? Based on region, where they are, because Hindus are minorities in more than 8 states in our country. So should they not have rights where they are minority? What about the linguistic minorities? They are not even defined or addressed properly. Ji.
You know, the Constitution again is economic system neutral, right? Whether you're a capitalist society or you're a socialist society, it doesn't make a difference. In fact, the Constitution itself is a document which both talks about change, right? When, individual freedoms, including the right to own property and so on and so forth, is a capitalist concept. Equally, right? You have welfare as a mandate of the Constitution. Today you can't get doctrinaire about any economic system, right? The goal is growth with equity.
Right.
That is the growth, and that's what Viksit Bharat. You can't leave too many people behind. You can't have gross inequality.
Correct.
Right? Piketty has already shown the kind of, disparity there is between the top 1% and the rest of a country in America and other places like that. So inherently, the socialist word introduction in the preamble, according to me, was just, it was just an attempt at sort of proclaiming the socialist pretensions of a then government during the emergency, which was far from socialist. So right. Also secular. India has enough secular. We were always a secular constitution.
Correct.
The preamble didn't need to include these own words because it suggested that before that we were neither socialist nor secular. And actually, the Constitution itself, all those minority right provisions, right, itself mandated provisions for minority protection. So, talking about 1975. It was only because there was an emergency and they needed to tom-tom something. And of course, the secular part during the emergency was the Congress secular pretensions got a blow because of Turkman Gate in Delhi. So when they announced the elections, just before they announced the elections in 1977, they made these 2 changes in the preamble. That we are A for the poor, because that was their whole slogan all the time, Garibi Hatao and so on and so forth. And the other one was the pandering to the Muslim minority vote bank, which they had basically lost, or so they thought, in the 77 election.
True, but that's why I'm saying if minorities' rights should not be denied, then who's a minority? Should they not be based on the region? Or should this entire convenient replacing the word Muslim with the word minority as a convenient political, in the political lexicon, should that not be undone and should that not be very clearly defined? That's why I'm asking you, Maheshji, for Bharat to move forward, should there not be clarity on this? Should Hindus in Jammu and Kashmir not be defined as minority? Should Hindus in Meghalaya, should Hindus in Nagaland, should Buddhists in Nagaland and Meghalaya, should they not be very clearly defined as minorities?
Well, that's an interesting thought, and yes, certainly there is a need to redefine the concept of minority, depending on the composition of a given state. You can certainly make that addition to bring it in line with reality, and that change, I don't think anybody would object to. It's unexceptionable. But at that time when the constitution was being, we didn't have the Kashmiri Pandit problem. For instance, we didn't think that it would pan out in such a way. But maybe with changing times and change of circumstances, there may be a case for that.
Well, the other one is judicial reforms, Maheshji. 4.8 crore plus pendency of cases. Should there not be something that will not just clearly dictate, define, and ensure that justice is neither delayed nor denied? Shouldn't one of these foremost pillars of democracy also be accountable to the other three?
First of all, there's accessibility. There's a very minuscule proportion of our population that has access to the courts, right? For a lot of people, the courts are, sort of an alien institution. So in this country, but I think that once more and more people with the growing middle class in this country, I think there's going to be a docket explosion because litigation is going to proliferate. But let's get to the root causes. What are the root causes of this problem? The root causes of this problem are delays, and who causes the arrears? The arrears are basically caused by everybody who is a stakeholder in the system except the litigant, right? And on the other hand, it incentivizes a dishonest litigant, right? So he can give perjured statements and he can give false documents in court just to delay his case.
Right.
That's one of the big tragedies, that it is encouraging a criminal mind in this country. One doesn't realize even in civil cases it's happening. People forge documents randomly at will. Every second will is questioned as being a forged document in this country. So you need to have the government appointing more judges, right? Paying them better, paying judges better. I still think, I know people say judges are very well paid already, but some judges themselves don't seem to think so. Look at the increase in judicial corruption that we're seeing these days. So clearly, to disincentivize judicial corruption, you need to raise salaries for judges and perks and things like that. The other thing you need to do is you need to improve the infrastructure of the court.
Correct.
You need to have more e-filings, bringing technology to use in courts as well, and increasing the number of judges, because we have one of the lowest judges to litigating population in the whole world.
In the whole world. So that has to improve. Who makes these appointments? Also, when you talked about more and more criminal instances, let's talk about the criminal justice system. Should there not be a central body to define the process for election appointment of prosecutors? Because burden of proof lies on the prosecution as well as their training.
Look, both the key people who run the system and are necessary for its successful functioning is the judiciary and the prosecutors and of course the police, right? That's in the criminal justice system. But therefore, as far as prosecutors are concerned, at the moment what we are really witnessing is, and this is a fact, and I'm being very blunt about it, right? Our entire appointment of prosecutors is based on a patronage system and not merit, right? The whole system is opaque as to how you appoint prosecutors. There's a wink and a nod given by somebody influential, right? And then the appointing authority, whoever it is, takes that into account and does it, right? Irrespective of whether there is merit or not. And I will tell you the kind of injustice that is being done by having incompetent prosecutors. There are some prosecutors who go to court, right, and don't oppose bail. In Calcutta, that post-poll violence case, there have been CBI prosecutors. The matter was transferred to CBI. And there are CBI prosecutors who've actually not opposed bail from the most heinous acts of murder in that post-poll violence case, which was of 21. So, the system needs to change drastically. You really, really need to have far-reaching and very, very profound change.
Well, Mahesh Jethmalani ji, thank you for being candid. As always a pleasure speaking with you. We've run out of time, so I sincerely thank all our other panelists also. There's so much to be covered, viewers. The Samvidhaan to Shiksha to all our Sansthans. There's a lot that needs to be done to actually bring the element of Bharat into the document that will define the road ahead for our nation. Thank you for watching. Namaste.
This is News.
And we are getting some important piece of breaking news from the cricketing field, where this is the match between India and South Africa. This is the second test, and India unfortunately has lost by a whopping 408 runs. My colleague Shivani Gupta with more on this. Shivani, a heartbreaking attempt at in fact taking on South Africa. 408 runs is the margin that we are talking about as far as India's losing is concerned.
Yes, this is the heaviest defeat for India in a test match in terms of runs, and certainly ignominy that has been piled on the Indian team by the visitors, the South African team. They have not just won, mind you, this two-match series 2-0, but they've also won it very, very comprehensively. India was not a contest in this test series at all. Yes, a lot of the attention went on the pitch and the spin conditions in the first match, but here as well, even if the pitch was not as quote-unquote problematic, India couldn't really stand up to the South African bowlers, and a lot of questions will be asked on not just the quality of the Indian batting lineup, but what is going on as far as the dressing room is concerned, the team selection to begin with, and just the vision that the team should have, particularly for a series at home, because for a very long time we have been nearly unbeatable at home, but South Africa is one of those teams that has managed to beat India twice in the last 25 years at home. So something was certainly not very right as far as this test series is concerned. Yes, there was that injury to Shubman Gill in the first match that could have been the difference between a win and a loss, but you cannot really depend on just one batsman alone, even if that happens to be your talismanic captain. Overall, there has been, I think, a little bit of inexperience that has shown out. Number 3, 4, 5 positions seem to be completely in disarray. A lot of, remember, these are series that are being played for the first time since the likes of Pujara, Rohit Sharma, Virat Kohli, Ashwin have not been in the side. This is a rebuilding phase, but still this loss and the manner of this loss has come in as a bit of a jolt to Indian cricket.
But is it really, Shivani, because there have been very many statements that have been made, like, for example, Ravindra Jadeja saying how this loss is not going to be impacting their next tournament that is taking place in Sri Lanka. What do you make of such statements that is coming in right ahead of, and also after the losses we will see more and more players possibly reacting, because this is a calamity that we are talking about as far as Team India is concerned?
Yes, obviously, any member of the team will try to put it in perspective and will try to downplay what has transpired in this test series, but it is one of the worst defeats that we've had, and overall the test series has also kind of been has put dirt on our face, to use that phrase, because the first match was a shocker. The pitch conditions that allegedly were asked for were a shocker, and then in the second match, Guwahati being a debutant test match venue, hasn't been any great. The problem